And you're not very loud.
Yeah, I'll turn it up here.
Okay, we're testing the sound a little bit.
Oh, okay, yeah. How's that sound?
That
Is
sounds
that
better.
Okay, good.
Maybe a little louder, James.
Yeah, this testing, see how this sounds. Can you hear me? Great. Thanks, everybody. This is Bill Kane, and very pleased to see all our BOC members are on, and we have a chance to talk about housing this afternoon, and budgets and kind of vision and where we are with a bunch of activities in the community. So Sarah's going to lead us through the discussion. I think it's going to be pretty much open forum. And Sarah, why don't you take it away?
Oh, before you do
Thank
that,
you, Mr. Mayor.
we did want to recognize the counselors that were in the room. I think Pam was going to do that.
You need
Yeah.
to do a roll call.
Yeah.
Yeah, if that's all right. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Let's start with Bill Infante.
Here.
Thank you, Bill. Gary Tenenbaum.
Here.
Gary. Glenn Drummond.
Here.
Thank you. David Knight.
Here.
Elise Hoddle. Present. Ryan Slack.
Here.
Thank you, Ryan. And Mayor Kane.
Here.
Thank you. They're all present. Thank you.
Okay.
Should I begin?
Well, yeah, why don't we go through an intro? Sarah's probably going to do that, introduce BOC members, and we'll go around the table, the virtual table, to make sure council knows who all of our BOC guys are.
Absolutely. So Sarah with the Town's Planning Department, and our BOC members, we have a few of them on the line, includes Kathy Click, who is our chair, Doug McDonald, Ann Baker, who may be that phone number that we're not sure of.
That's me.
Excellent. Thanks, Ann.
I'm on the phone.
And we also have Katie Erickson. So we currently have 4 BOC members.
Oh, good.
Always looking for more, so please send them our way if you know of anyone who would be a good fit. So as an overview, BOC is, as you know, a council-appointed citizen coalition originally founded in 2009. BOC's purpose is to act as an advisory board to council on all matters affordable and community housing. They do land use reviews. They discuss ways to develop affordable housing in the town, as well as look at code language that's related to affordable and community housing. So 2020 has been a little bit of a strange year, but during this time, BOC has still provided referral comments to council on a couple of land use cases, provided recommendations regarding the town's community housing livability guidelines, and this is going to be something that council will be seeing in the near future. Also participated in conversation with the Regional Housing Coalition. So I'd say the most significant thing BOC has done in 2020 is really about keeping informed on the various issues associated with housing, how the pandemic has really impacted our community and affordable housing tenants in the town. And BOC has also tracked the rental assistance programs that have been available through the state and the counties when they were available. So tonight we want to have a work session regarding considerations items for the 2021 work plan and get some feedback from the council. And some of these do have budget implications. I'm going to share my screen just so this can be on. We'll get that letter on the screen if you don't mind. There we go. This is our chair's letter that she creates yearly since I've been here, just to kind of provide a summary of what's been going on and where BOC is interested in going. So just to start kind of at the end, there's those items that do not have budget implications, and those include evaluating barriers and incentives to developing affordable and workforce housing, assessing the affordable needs of specific businesses and employers within the town, exploring the need for potential senior-specific housing, and strategizing the public-private partnerships for successful affordable housing projects. And then there are other items that BOC is interested in pursuing that do have budget implications. And the first is related to the support for the Regional Housing Coalition. In 2020's budget, the Town Council did include $10,000 to be provided to the Regional Housing Coalition in support of their initiatives. And during the pandemic, that those efforts have kind of ceased for a bit. And so this $10,000 wasn't expended by the town in 2020, But BOC does expect the Regional Housing Coalition to start back up in 2021 and is requesting that funding to be available in 2021's budget in support of the Regional Housing Coalition's efforts. That's one. And the second deals with rental assistance, which is kind of spanning these two pages. So what BOC has been having conversations with area Basalt affordable housing project property managers. And those property managers have consistently been reporting difficulties with tenants paying rent, early releases from their leases, some are requesting those early releases, as well as unit vacancies. And so this has been a pretty regular thing during the pandemic. Rental assistance is no longer available through the counties. A lot of those folks were getting rental assistance through Pickens County. The moratorium on evictions is no longer in effect. So local tenants are really being impacted of our SALT population. And one of the affordable housing managers did note that there are a number of tenants that are facing certain evictions. The BOC anticipates these disruptions will be ongoing to the local economy. We've got the pandemic that's continuing to be a struggle for people's employment. We've got the fires that's adding on to additional struggles. So BOC, in light of all this, BOC is requesting $10,000 in 2020 for funds for immediate assistance to tenants of the Basalt affordable housing who have a very demonstrated need. We're also requesting in 2021 funds $15,000 towards the development of a program with the intent of providing rental assistance. And BOC anticipates being able to partner with another local organization or nonprofit and leverage resources in order to really make a viable program happen for our town. We've recently heard about other local programs that are interested in working on the same issue. There's the Mountain Voices Project you may have read about in the newspaper recently. We do know that project is more regional. BOC is really more interested in, of course, providing local assistance, within our town. So we haven't, BOC hasn't quite, ironed out all the details, but really wanted to bring this forth to council for some discussion and some guidance, and also for the request for funding for 2021. So with that, I'm happy to send it over to James if you think that you'd like to add anything, or the BOC members if you'd like to have some discussion there.
I think Sarah provided a good summary. I think it'd be appropriate to hear from Kathy Click, who's the chair, and Doug McDonald, and Ann Baker, if you have comments.
Great. Kathy, sounds like you're on. So before you begin, I guess I want to reiterate how grateful we are for the time you guys give to this, and the really great accomplishments. And BOC has grown enormously from when we fired it up. It was like a garage band when we started back in 2010 or 11. So love to hear, maybe you can embellish a little bit more on the report, and then tell us about the budget request. Would be great.
Sure thing. We've been very much an advisory group, and in that advisory capacity, our focus changed enormously come March. So we obviously weren't going to be getting any applications to review. We had reviewed a couple, the car wash. It's not the car wash, but it's the units over there on South Side. We had looked at the livability standards and tried to bump those up and made them a little bit more, what do I want to say, maybe modern. And then in March, we started focusing really on rental assistance and mortgage assistance. And it is something that BOC has spoken about in an anecdotal way over the last couple of years. But of course, when the economy's booming, it's not really that much of a pressing issue. that all of a sudden it was going to be a pressing issue. And that really became the focus of our research and what staff has supported us in contacting property managers and trying to see what's happening at Roaring Fork Apartments, what's happening at Willett 7, how are the renters in town-owned units, how are they looking at their future and being able to keep up with their payments and what their prospects are for the future. People who've been furloughed don't get paid, but they keep their job. So if people have been furloughed, that's going to affect their ability to make monthly payments. So that's really where we've been focusing on for the last almost 6 months. And I'm going to ask Doug to speak to this because he has been following the Colorado State Assistance Funds, and that is also really kind of leading our discussion at this time. I would say that asking for $10,000 for the remainder of 2020 and $15,000 for 2021 isn't obviously a fully funded rental assistance, mortgage assistance program. But what we would like to do is to be able to leverage those funds with either the state or other nonprofits in order to help people who are facing imminent eviction or relocation. So with that, I think I would like to ask Doug to speak more.
Okay, thanks, Kathy. We'll be very grateful for the town to be able to fund some of the short-term needs of those people that are really facing imminent eviction. And that's part of what is in the emergency assistance programs from the state. The Department of Housing has announced that they're now up and running with 2 programs. The first is POP, which stands for Property Owner Preservation. That's a program that's aimed at giving landlords some relief and being able to, in fact, pay back rents as far as March the 1st for their tenants, and to cover various kinds of fees which might have been late fees and so on. So fee coverage and rental coverage back to March 1st is what's involved in that program. It's a program that is aimed at the landlords or the property owners and not the tenants. So the property owner has to make the application for these funds, and the property owner has to be enrolled in this program. Apparently, it's been very popular. They tell me here, there's already 634 property owners have enrolled in the program since last month. So that's something that if our current property owners have not done, they should look at because that's just part of the process. The other program that they've launched is called the Emergency Housing Assistance Program, and that's dedicated specifically towards the tenants themselves. I've spent a little time going through the online requirements for an individual tenant to apply for this, and I won't go into a lot more detail. Suffice it to say that it's a pretty arduous and restrictive process for an individual to pursue this individual relief. So what I've been recommending to staff is that we pursue informing and contacting our local property owners and landlords to take advantage of the Property Owner Preservation Program. It looks like the best course of action. And so that's looking like it's an active program without too many roadblocks that we should be pursuing. Questions about that?
Maybe to expand on that, associated with those programs, Bach, in having conversations about the rental assistance program, was kind of seeing the town funding as kind of a stopgap measure that could be kind of associated with getting people into those programs as well, just kind of as a clarification.
That's good news. I think the staff also had some thoughts about maybe either flip-flopping or, I'm not sure, doing $15,000 now and $15,000 next. If Ryan's on, maybe you could provide a comment on that.
Yeah, staff was going to come back at a future meeting to make a recommendation to council on the use of our CARES Act funding, as we still have some of that left. And so this would be a good time and a recommendation from staff to do more of the funding now in 2020, perhaps to that $15,000 level, and then look at the $10,000 for next year, possibly going up from that $10,000 a bit. We'll just need to kind of wrestle with some different competing interests next year, and have to kind of put the final word on that. But ultimately, I think that's the direction we were going to recommend, is more now, and it could probably be used, it sounds like, going to be facing conviction.
Hey, Ryan, if you could speak into your mic on your laptop.
That's the first time I've been accused of having a soft voice. Is that better?
Yeah.
I think it was actually 970-927-4701, whoever that is. There was a lot of interference.
Okay. Maybe for those on the phone, if you could possibly mute your phone, is that?
I'll give that a try.
Okay. So for those of you that didn't hear, it was just a recommendation that this year, we're certain we'd be able to provide that $15,000 because we have the CARES Act funding, which could, certainly come of use, I'm sure, given the, evictions that will likely come. And then, possibly doing the $10,000 as a recommendation for next year. And if council wants to look at more, I think I was just making the point that, we've got a lot of different pots and interests for next year. And so ultimately you'll have to make that decision, but we could do more now is the main.
I think doing more now would be awesome. And I think it would also show that actually the town is being responsive and we're concerned about, our community. And I think that would be great. I'd be in favor of that.
This is Ann. I'd definitely in favor.
Yeah, I think relative to, kind of evaluating this as we go along, we now know we have 215 units that are under the purview of the town, so this population is growing, and, the potential for need is growing also. So, I love the idea of leveraging these monies and the programs that Doug outlined with the state. And I think we just kind of watch this on a month-to-month basis and see how we're doing, what our success levels are for leveraging and partnering up and getting more money flowing into these kind of assistance plans, and see how this goes. But yeah, I think the $1,000 sounds like a good start, and I guess honestly there's more where that came from. I guess the question I would have is whether you guys have a formal connection to the Aspen Community Foundation, which in their COVID relief fund, which is I think almost $10 million now, there's a pretty significant commitment to rent assistance. And have you had any conversations or interaction with ACF folks?
We haven't, but that is obviously, that's an obvious go-to. And
Yeah.
It's not something that we wanted to just sort of foist on somebody else, but we wanted to be able to come and speak with them as players, if you would. That we're trying to put some money behind this as well. not significant like 10 million, but that it was a priority for the town and for Bach in that way.
Great. Well,
Bill, may I make a comment?
yeah.
First of all, thank you, Bach, so much. Affordable housing is something near and dear to me. I live in the Roaring Fork Apartments. I also wanted to say, take this opportunity I have a question and a comment. Comment first, really quickly, is I would love to see more affordable housing to purchase so that there is like a direct route for somebody who comes into the community, who starts in a rental and can move into permanent housing. So whatever, research is available, best practices, I'm really interested. I'm hoping that the Regional Housing Coalition will start meeting again, and I am planning to sit on that board. And then my question is, I'm just curious, I'm absolutely for the 15,000 this year, but I would love to know how does that get distributed? Does it just get like a bucket goes to a building manager and they decide which tenants get it, or what is the plan there? Thank you.
I think Bach doesn't have that completely figured out at this point, since it's a new concept. I think generally there would be an application process that Bach is working on establishing, and we could come back to council with that kind of process if it's looking like the funding's there.
I would also say that the Aspen Community Foundation, as an example, has developed a process, as had Eagle County, and so it might be reasonable to either take that from them and Bach themselves do the process, or as was maybe suggested, we work with Aspen Community Foundation and see if they would sort of be the manager of that program as an alternative too. So I think there's definitely some options, and as James said, they can bring those back to this council.
So a question I had, we have 4 board members. What did we allocate? Do we have 7 positions available on the board, on the Bach Board of Directors, or is it 5? What's the governance arrangement for
It's
Bach?
5.
5, okay. So we're only one person down.
Right.
So
I would also say, I guess, in response to Elisa's comments, that we do definitely feel that the Regional Housing Authority is going to be one of the ways that affordable housing in the Valley goes forward. And I think we also share your hope that they will be able to reconfigure in the beginning of the year and start to make some progress. So I would hope that $10,000 commitment from 2020 would still be available to help them achieve that goal of actually getting started. Because I do feel like that's going to be a way forward for this issue. Basalt doesn't have a housing authority, and using the Regional Housing Authority would be an excellent and efficient way of dealing with these issues going forward, especially for purchasing units.
we have some Basalt folks on that authority. Is Dave Myler on that board? Do you know?
Yeah, Dave Myler was one of the founders.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Dave
He
is
would-
looking to be, no, that's the other group, sorry. Yeah.
Well, Dave would be a good guy to talk to. I think it'd be great to chat with him at one of our work sessions, and get the Regional Housing Authority perspective on where we're going to.
If my only comment would be to make sure that whatever funds we do provide go to individuals instead of, per se, the property manager of the
Yeah.
property.
Yeah.
These are really, this was spurred by a discussion of this, the eviction moratorium being lifted. And so this is really, these are dire situations that we're looking at. So I think we agree with that.
Absolutely. There's only one thing that just springs to mind. This may not be the forum for that, but Bach will have to consider when we're looking at multiple sources of assistance. We need to read everybody's requirements and restrictions very carefully, because we don't want to cut ourselves out, for example, of the state funds by providing some other kind of aid that they say, well, if you get this, you can't have that. That appears in some of the literature, and so we need to be aware of that. That's all.
Yeah. That's great. Well, good stuff. Yeah, maybe we ought to do an advertisement to make sure we get a full board, do a newspaper ad or whatever outreach we think is appropriate. It'd be great to get you guys up to full strength.
Gary?
David.
I have a quick question. Thanks for all the work. It's super important, like everyone stated. Do we have any ideas? People say a lot of evictions coming a tsunami. There's all kinds of words like that. But in absolute terms, as far as the number of evictions we're anticipating, the dollar amount of rent assistance that's needed to kind of prevent those evictions from occurring, do we have any idea what that might be at this point in Basalt, roughly?
I think we can pursue finding that information. I've had a conversation with somebody over at the Roaring Fork Apartments when the property management group, who has indicated, that was the first conversation about tenants that are facing potential eviction. And so I think that information can be found pretty easily. I don't know that number off top, today though, unfortunately.
But just kind of as some data, previously, maybe a month or so ago, we had spoken with the Roaring Fork Apartments property manager, and they indicated that over 20 people there were seeking assistance with Pickens County, and since that's been cut off, there's been a fraction of those that have gotten worse in terms of moving towards eviction.
Okay. Thank you.
Gary?
Well, no, I had a similar question to David about, what is the real need? I mean, obviously during the beginning of this, there was a huge need, but as things have stabilized, I really just wanted to find out the need. I'm totally in support of this and getting prepared for something to happen, and it would be great to be able to jump into action pretty quickly. So just kind of like trying to anticipate the need, because I look at it in like we might need more. I want to be fair to everybody through this, and also not want to break our bank on this, and so leveraging the funds. But I think if we had a better idea of how much we're thinking, we could get bigger partners involved. But I support it, and I thank the 4 members of the board, and would love to get another one, but you guys have been awesome on this, so thank you.
Well, thank you guys for your time. And I think we can get that information for you, and we'll work on that going, in our next couple of meetings.
Yeah, it'd be great. Yeah, get a sense of how big the issue is. Well, thank you guys. We have arrived at our magic hour. We have to move on with our regular meeting. So I really appreciate being able to talk to our Bach guys and talk about housing, and we'll keep this going. I don't know when we will get back, but it'll be really good to see how the fall unfolds. A lot unknown, obviously, about ski season and employment levels and what the status of the economy is going to be this fall. So we're going to stay tuned and stay in close touch with you about it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Everybody on the town council, I hope you'll stay on. So, it is now 6:03, and I would like to call to order and call the roll for our regular council meeting for August 25, 2020. Ms. Dilling?
Okay. Begin with Glenn Drummond.
Here.
David Knight.
Here.
Elise Hottle.
Still present.
Thank you. Brian Slack.
Here.
Thank you. Bill Kane.
Here.
Gary Tenenbaum.
Here.
Thank you, Gary. Bill Infante. He may have just stepped away from his
Yeah,
computer for a moment,
sure,
but
sure. He
I
was,
think he's still on, so.
yeah.
It looks like you're getting ready to say something.
Thank you.
All righty. The first order of business then is to approve our consent agenda, which consists of the minutes from August 11. And is there a motion to approve the consent agenda items as presented? Yeah, Pam?
So Elise had pointed out some anomalies in the minutes this last time, so I did go through and correct those. Elise, did you get a chance to look at those?
I did not, I'm sorry.
So it might be worth waiting until the next meeting to approve them, because there were some things that were really strange in the minutes, unfinished sentences, things in text boxes that didn't belong. So if council would be all right with that, we can represent those minutes at the next meeting.
Oh, that'd be great. Okay, fine.
If that's okay. Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Sam.
Thanks, Elise.
Okay, then our next order of business is to solicit public comment. So this is a call to the public. This is an opportunity for those listening in to address the town council, make any comments. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes and address your comments directly to the mayor. Identify yourself by name and address when making comments. Comments should be courteous, civil, and constructive, and town council will make no decision or take action except to direct the town manager. So the mic is open, the phones are open. If you'd like to address the council, this is your time to call in.
Okay, and just a reminder to everyone to email planning@basalt.net or text 970-987-7010 with your name and your phone number, and we will call you. We didn't get any notification before the meeting of anybody that wanted to speak. We did get some public comments on the St. Vincent land use application that will enter into the record during that public hearing. And let me check and see. I'm running the clock, but let me see if any additional emails came in.
Looked like Brian Slack was going to have a caller, maybe there. He had a young caller that was an experienced democracy.
Just stay at home life. Stay at home life. Home parenting.
So I think if we just wait a few more seconds, I think we're probably good, and then we'll double check that no text messages came in. So I think we're good. You didn't get anything, right, Ryan?
We can always circle back if we get a call.
Okay.
Okay, so with that, we have the manager is up. Ryan, so you got the floor.
Okay. So just a couple things for council. So the first is, let's see, at the last meeting, Christy had brought up about a tabor limitation, and so we just wanted to follow up on that briefly. So essentially, last year when we had the ballot question about the property tax, when you do your tabor disclosure, you have to put not only the tax that is assumed to be collected, but then also the total revenue amount for both general and restricted funds. And so with some of the additional funds we've been getting in for the sales tax, as well as the building permits, we wanted to just go back and make sure. And so Susan and Christy have been working over the last few weeks and continue to on getting the information on the building permits, just to kind of get a better idea of what that revenue is anticipated to be. As well, Christy's looking, of course, continually at the sales tax. And we've talked to the department heads about grants. So any non-federal grants that aren't anticipated, we'll also look at those through a pretty close lens, just to make sure that they wouldn't tip the scales. And then lastly, council or staff's going to recommend to council a resolution. We've been talking about this contribution to CAW from the developer at Willits, and possibly just bringing that straight from the developer to CAW instead of running it through the town's finances. And with it could come the same, restrictions that the council would desire, but it just kind of doesn't hit our finances at the end of the day. The good news is we think we're going to be fine. Just in an abundance of caution, we're wanting to, just keep close tabs on that. So with that, just a general update for you. Happy to answer any questions you might have there. Let's see, we are finishing up or underway with our water tank warranty work. And so we were able to get our 1 million gallon water tank drained last week. Everything went smoothly there. And Public Works staff has been busy making sure that tank was dry and delivered to the contractor as needed. And so the contractor's up there actively fixing some of the spots that needed fixing, and we anticipate to get that back online next week. So good news there. And then tonight I asked Brian Vicenti to join just in case I don't hit all of the points, but we've been working on the recreation schedule for this fall and kind of what the town's role in that might be. So Brian's been doing a lot of work there. We have several offerings at this point up on the recreation webpage. And so we've got soccer and t-ball for the young ones. We have a offering through the Roaring Fork Conservancy, doing a fly fishing course, as well as a river discovery course. We also have tennis lessons, golf lessons at the Roaring Fork Club for junior golf. And then Brian's also been working with the lacrosse clubs, both from Aspen area as well as Mid-Valley. And they've got some offerings going, the Roaring Fork Soccer Club and TAC Fitness. And then also he continues to look for some art offerings, sort of non-sport oriented offerings for those that may not be inclined to pursue one of the sports. And then he's also still trying to talk to some parents about baseball and football, like flag football type of situation. So, and then as it relates to the pool, right now the pool is slated to close the day after Labor Day. We, at this point, have Brian as a full-time lifeguard and one other lifeguard that's licensed. He's reached out to his colleagues. He's been around the Valley in this industry for a long time, and that didn't bear fruit. Also did an ad on Facebook, and then we have some advertisements running in the newspapers as well. The trick is they have to be certified lifeguards at this point. We wouldn't be able to certify them, in part because of the timing. It's a 30-hour course, but also part of the course see what we get out of the newspaper articles, or excuse me, advertisements, but if not able to do anything, we're going to need to go ahead and close it at the normal timing that we would every year. So, Brian, is there anything that I might have missed there?
Hi guys, no, there isn't. I think Ryan hit all the main points, but we're always looking for the next best thing. We're always trying to add. We do have a little collaboration going on right now with Roaring Fork Outdoor Volunteers, as well as the Conservancy for these Wednesdays for the middle schoolers when they don't have any schooling whatsoever. So we're looking at some half-day offerings, maybe like a round robin idea. 10 or 12 kids start at one location, at each location, and they spend about an hour, hour and a half at it, and then move on to another location in a round robin circle. They learn a little bit about outdoor volunteers and maybe some trail work and stewardship. They go to the Conservancy and they learn a little bit about river discovery, maybe some science involved in that. And then we use one of the school fields and we do a little physical education. Maybe it's a kickball or flying kites and just a little outdoor activity. Probably more likely a half-day type of activity, but something for these middle schoolers when there is no school on Wednesdays is what we're working on as well. So always looking for something new.
That's all I had for you today, Mayor.
Thanks very much, Ryan. I think I got our agenda topics reversed, so I skipped past mayor and council reports and comments. So I'd like to circle back to that one, see if anybody on council has any comment or reports that they would like to make.
Quick one, if I could.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, I've seen a lot of effort and progress on the looking on Facebook and everything with the activities. So thank you for that, Brian, and everybody else. I think the continued safe social interaction is important. And I also saw the soccer today, which was pretty awesome. There were a lot of kids and parents out there watching. So it's good stuff. It's really important to a lot of people. So thank you.
Great. Good comment. Anyone else on council?
Mayor, I have a comment.
Yeah, go ahead, Elise.
I just wanted to throw an idea out there in the honor of better communication in the time of COVID. Bill Infante and I thought about seeing whether any council members were interested in kind of having just like a 1 hour coffee time, maybe rotating between coffee shops, so we're spreading our business around, that is noticed, but allows, you know, multiple counselors to get together and chit chat as well as the public. So don't know if there's any interest in that idea. We met the other day just, you know, for fun to catch up, and it was interesting because we had one of the members of the public that was kind of listening in on our conversation say that it was the most, what did he say, Bill? The most esoteric, or no, that wasn't the word. I don't know.
Erudite. It was better than that.
Erudite, that's right. Anyway, so just wanted to throw that idea out there. And while I'm talking about communication, I'm definitely interested in doing one of the videos. I just have to come up with some talking points because so if anybody has any ideas, I would love to hear those. Great, excellent. Thank you for that. I just a little feedback. I mean, I'd be very interested in the coffee kind of clatch community kind of rounds. I think that's because it does feel, I have to say, a little bit hollow just for us to communicate with Zoom. It really doesn't quite do the job. So I do feel like, you know, we need something else to kind of communicate better. So that sounds like a good idea. And if you'd like, Ryan and I can get together and we'll follow up and maybe suggest, I like the idea of moving it around so it's not always at one place, but that's, we have a lot of possible stops. So I've been personally using the busker night as an opportunity, and
at great personal sacrifice, sampling specialty cocktails and dinners around the community, and have really been pleased and really have got it. You just see 1 million people. It's really a gratifying kind of thing to do. So the coffee thing, I can assure you, would probably be successful. So it's a great idea. We'll work out the details on that. Maybe somehow we can, by staying congruent with the Colorado Open Meetings Law, we can figure out how to do this. But good suggestion. Anyone else on council comments, commentary, reports? I'll offer a few things. So Ryan, I think, hit it. I got a call from TACA, and they were nervous about receiving reimbursement for a park and some monies that had been committed. We had an excellent call with Mariner, and I think we feel confident that sort of developer commitment to the project will be forthcoming. So that was, I think, a really worthwhile effort. I think I mentioned the busker nights seem to be going really well. Most of the restaurateurs I've talked to are really grateful. They like seeing them. The restaurant, the River Pig painting project seems to be going pretty well. I think people really enjoy the kind of creativity and variety. It's pretty neat. Ryan covered the pool extension. I think we're doing everything we can. I know I've been hearing from a lot of parents that would love to see our hours extended, and lifeguards are obviously challenging. We've got every Facebook page, every park and rec director in the valley engaged, plus newspaper ads trying to find certified lifeguards. So that's going to be the key to that one. We did we do a quarterly mayors and managers meeting organized by Eagle County, pretty informative about what's going on relative to reported cases, COVID, transportation, school reopening. So we heard a wide array of reports, and I think everybody's pretty much right where we are. We're trying to transition back into face-to-face education efforts by September 21st, and reports seem to be down, and seems like we're going in the right direction right now. I also serve on the RAFTA board, and a couple things to note. RAFTA was spectacularly successful in receiving an $11.8 million grant to completely renovate, expand, and improve the bus maintenance facility at Glenwood Springs. Kind of a very big deal. $12 million grant don't come along every day, so the staff there has really done a great job. Maroon Bells exceeded capacity, exceeded anticipated revenue, and customer satisfaction seems to be pretty high. So RAFTA's hanging in. The buses are still operating with only 15 occupants per bus. Pretty hard way to run a railroad when you got buses with 44-seat capacity and you can only put 15 passengers on them to observe social distancing and spacing, and that will go on for the foreseeable future. It's a tough business model. You have to crank, almost double capacity, and then you have declining ridership. So it's not one of those things you make up on volume. So at any rate, there are just some comments I thought I would make. So any other comments from council before we move on? All right, thank you.
Yeah. Just a reminder, so last week was set to be the last Wednesday of buskers. It was going to go through the 19th, and we felt like there was, still some good participation out there, and so we did extend it by one more week. So we do have this Wednesday where we will have buskers out and about in both Willits and downtown.
Yeah, the reports I've gotten from talking to property managers and club managers in the valley is that people are still here and they do not appear to be in any hurry to go back home. So, we're still seeing pretty good activity levels out at night. So, okay, hearing no further comments, we'll move to item 6A, which is a public hearing and first reading of ordinance number 17. Series of 2020, an ordinance of the Town Council of the Town of Basalt, Colorado, granting rezoning and P Public Zone District site plan review approval, a community housing mitigation waiver, and establishment of dimensional requirements in the P Public Zone District, including an off-street parking reduction for an expansion at St. Vincent's Church, located at 240 Midland Avenue, Basalt, Colorado. So James, I think, is going to lead us through the application and the ordinance.
Mayor, if I could interrupt, I'm a parishioner at St. Vincent's, and I believe I can objectively evaluate this application, but I'm sensitive to perception of bias. So out of an abundance of caution, I'm going to recuse myself from this one.
Okay, it's well duly noted. I think we still have a quorum, take action, so.
David, I'll text you when we're ready to for the next item.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks, Ryan.
Okay, thank you. We have Pat McMahon here this evening with us, and I think I saw Father Rick was on there as well. We'll get to their comments here after the staff comments. This is a public hearing and a first reading of an ordinance on an application submitted by Archdiocese as well as St. Vincent's Church. And it's to construct an expansion to St. Vincent's Church at 240 Midland Avenue. The development review actions, as the mayor indicated, are a rezoning to the P Public Zone District, a community housing review to waive the affordable housing mitigation requirements, as well as a site plan review to establish the allowable dimensional requirements for the site in the P Public Zone District, including a reduction in the off-street parking requirements. The property subject to the application is St. Vincent's Church. It's at 240 Midland Avenue, and I've got a photo of it here on the screen. It's currently zoned C2 and contains an existing church of about 5,900 square foot and a small rectory house that you see on the screen here. The proposal is to demolish the existing rectory house and construct an addition to the church of about 2,400 square foot. You can see the site plan here. This is the existing church. This is the location of the existing rectory house, and this area that I've got the cursor on is the proposed 2,400 square foot addition to Parish Hall. They're proposing to move the existing curb cut off of Midland Avenue to the west side of the property and do an access drive back to the rear of the structure to provide 4 parking spaces and a loading area that they don't currently have as part of the church configuration. They've indicated that they're proposing the addition to allow them to move the religious education classes out of the basement of the current facilities and provide a more workable space for their current activities. The review process that's included in the application is for P&Z to make a recommendation to the town council on all of the land use actions that are requested. And P&Z has reviewed the application and provided a recommendation. In evaluating the application, staff has identified a series of discussion items that are outlined in the staff memo to the Planning and Zoning Commission that was attached in your packet. We've also have the discussion items listed on the front page of your council memo. They include consistency with neighborhood character. The east end of Midland Avenue on the north side of the road is mainly one-story structures, and staff and the P&Z felt that the proposed scale of the addition is in keeping and compatible with the character of that area of town. With regards to consistency with the master plan, the proposal allowing the church to expand and meet its operational needs, to allow it to stay downtown in the downtown core, staff and the P&Z felt was consistent with the objectives in the master plan of encouraging a mix of uses downtown, cultivating pride in the downtown area, as well as keeping small town character and atmosphere, and maintaining vitality in the downtown area. It also allows it to continue to be an important gathering spot in downtown, was thought by the P&Z. In terms of access and parking, as I indicated, parking was a significant discussion item in 2007 when the applicants had proposed an expansion and received sketch plan approval for an expansion to the church. The applicants, as I indicated, proposed to add 4 parking spots to the back of the structure as well as a loading area. Staff and the P&Z thought this was an important addition to the program in that currently it's difficult for those with mobility challenges to get from the parking on Midland Avenue up to the church entrance, as there's quite a bit of grade in that area. So having the parking spaces out in the back allows for easier access for those with mobility challenges. The applicant also obtained consent from the school district to use the elementary and middle school parking for events, larger events, as was a requirement and as was discussed back in 2007 when the applicants received sketch plan approval for an addition. The access drive that's proposed is somewhat tight, but staff and the P&Z thought it was workable given the limited amount of traffic that would be using it. Staff and P&Z have included conditions in the draft ordinance for a cautionary signage plan that would be needed related to the narrow driveway. There's also language in the draft ordinance that would allow for a TRC staff level approval in the future if the church and the neighbor ever decided that they wanted to combine the driveway in the future, as it would likely benefit both properties. At the current time, the neighboring property to the west wasn't interested in combining the driveway. In terms of the community housing waiver, the church is one of the uses which a community housing mitigation waiver can be applied to by the council in the P Public Zone District. The applicants are proposing the waiver as they are not expanding the operations, but making it more workable space for the current operations. Basalt Affordable Community Housing Committee was supportive of the waiver request, and that's included in the draft ordinance. In terms of property boundary overlaps, towards the rear of the property, the shaded area that I have the cursor on, are property boundary overlaps with the property behind the church. The applicants have designed their site plan so as not to need that area for operational purposes. So they haven't proposed to fix that property overlap at this time. However, staff has included language in the draft ordinance in the conditions suggesting that they clean that up moving forward. Related to tree preservation and protection, there is a significant tree on the western property line that the neighbors are supportive of maintaining. The applicants have agreed and are proposing to maintain this tree that I have the cursor on. There's a condition requiring tree protection fencing be installed and that it be inspected by staff prior to starting construction. Additionally, there's a significant spruce tree in the front, which isn't shown on this survey here. But the applicants are also proposing to preserve that spruce tree. And there's similar conditions and requirements for protection fencing. Related to bat preservation, which is described in the P&Z memo, it was noted by a Planning and Zoning Commission member that the current rectory house has bats, and she felt that it was important to be able to save those bats in the demolition process. And so staff and the P&Z asked the applicant to provide a plan for protecting those bats. And so they are proposing to install these one-way bat doors that are in your packet, as well as a bat box elsewhere to provide an alternative place for them to live. And so the idea is to get the bats out of the house before it would be demolished so that they're not harmed. That's included in the conditions of approval. And then some other topics, future childcare. Back in 2007, when there was a sketch plan approval for an expansion, it provided an abbreviated review process if the applicants wanted to do childcare on the site in the future as an accessory use. The applicant is not proposing that at this point, but there has been language included by the P&Z and staff in the draft conditions that would allow for a P&Z review process in the future if the applicants ever wanted to do childcare as an accessory use, just because of the demand that's out there. Other conditions of note, there's requirements that the applicant meet the sustainable building regulations, and the applicants have actually proposed PV panels on the roof of the addition. In addition, there was some discussion at the P&Z level related to some public comments about construction management. There's a condition requiring a construction management plan be submitted prior to starting construction. Also, the neighbors had a request for maintaining the existing fence between the properties of St. Vincent and the one to the west throughout construction, and the applicants agreed to that, and so that was included in the conditions. There was public comment also that you'll find attached in your memo related to the construction hours. The applicants indicated that they didn't really want to adjust the construction hours, and staff and P&Z agreed. I think generally staff doesn't like to have different construction hours on a project by project basis. It makes it difficult. So the conditions include a requirement for the standard town construction hours. But in total, the Planning and Zoning Commission reviewed the application and recommended approval with the conditions that we have in the draft ordinance. So staff this evening would suggest hearing comments from the applicants and then taking public comments as it is a public hearing and providing council discussion. So at this point, I'll stop sharing my screen. And we have Pat McMahon and Father Rick is also here.
Thanks, James, and thank you everybody for including us on the agenda tonight. We're hopeful that our application is complete, and James, I thought, did an outstanding job of describing what we're doing. One thing I would like to add that's our primary motivation and driver for doing this addition is that our education classrooms are currently in the basement of the existing church. Those classrooms are accessed by a staircase. There's zero handicap access down there. There is a fire escape door, but it's on the same side of the building right by this entry staircase, so that if we ever had a fire or some serious issue down there, there are at least 5 classrooms that would be trapped with no means of escape. There's no windows, there's no other means of egress. So our main motivation is safety for our kids, and we want them out of that basement. The second driving factor is, in addition to worship and everything else that happens at church, fellowship is an extremely important component, and we do have a gathering space at the front of the existing church, but it's only 160 square feet. It can accommodate maybe a quarter of the people that show up for services. So if we're, planning coffee and donuts or sharing stories about our kids or talking about each other's relatives, that are in the hospital or whatever, we can't accommodate that now. So the new addition puts the classrooms on the street level with adequate emergency access. It improves the handicap access, and it gives us space for fellowship. So really, we don't anticipate any real change in our operation. We typically have about 300 people per week attend our services between, I believe it's 3 services that we have each weekend. That doesn't plan to change. The education program is not increasing. What we just want to do is create a more functional and more safe environment. And that's where we are. James, I'll pass it back to you for the public comments, I guess.
Staff would suggest asking any questions council has and then moving to public comment after that.
Any questions of Pat McMahon? Pat, this is excellent. You're doing a great job representing the church here. This is really, really great. You don't get any special dispensation, do you, as a reason?
It helped when we figured out the back plan.
That's good. I was pleased to see that was not some oblique reference to the town council, the bat. So that was good.
I think that Councilor Drummond had a question, Mayor.
Yes.
The only question I have is, why would you guys not want to clear up the plot issues, the overlapping?
There's no reason, Glenn, why we wouldn't want to do it. We just haven't. And when we get to public comments that have been received, you're going to see a request for a privacy fence from both of our neighbors to the north. And that'll pretty much require that we get that cleaned up.
I was just thinking, like, if you're changing things, it's always easier to do it now than it is later.
Okay.
That's just my thought.
Well, the neighbor to the north, where we have the overlap, has reached out for James and has indicated she'll reach out for us. So we'll start that conversation. It's apparently there's conflicting surveys. That one shows one thing and another survey shows something else, and they overlap. So that for us, the logical idea is to split it right down the middle. And if we throw in a fence, that's practically what's going to happen. So it would make sense to take whatever legal steps they are, and I don't know what they are, to clean that overlap up.
Just a curiosity, is Eric Gross represent the neighbor to the west, or does Eric actually live next door to the west?
The neighbor to the west is a rental property.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And there are tenants upstairs. I'm not sure the owner. We've met with them and her attorney, and they were really supportive of our project, but they declined on a shared driveway agreement, which we thought was helpful. Would be helpful, any number of things, but it is their property. So we will respect those wishes as we must, and we'll keep the fence up, and we'll have a construction fence during construction so we minimize dust and all that stuff. They were especially concerned about the tree because for their second floor renter, it provides a visual screen from a 2-story house on Homestead. And so they didn't want anybody looking in the bedroom. So we'll throw a fence around that tree during construction and protect it as well.
Great.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions from the council of the applicant at this point before we take public comment? Okay. Hearing none, then I would like to open the public hearing. Let the record show we are opening the hearing at 7:43 p.m. And please, if you're watching in and would like to make comment, please call in, and we'd be happy to have you address council.
So,
Susan, you want to keep an eye on this?
yeah, just as a note, to email planning@basalt.net or text 970-987-7010 with your name and your phone number, and then we'll call you. I would like James to enter into the record. We did get 3 letters from folks in the neighborhood, and then we got a response from the Archdiocese, from the applicant. And so I'll have James enter those into the public record and kind of summarize it, maybe.
Sure, yeah, you bet. We received letters from Polly Pollard, who lives directly behind the church, as well as Stephanie Scavulo, who also lives directly behind the church. And in their comments, both of them were interested in the potential for a privacy fence between the church property and their property. And then we also received additional correspondence from Jerry Terwilliger. He also had a letter that was in your packet, and then we received additional correspondence indicating interest in preserving the facade of the existing rectory house. He was also discussed the affordable housing and indicated that he thought somebody had been living in the rectory house until recently. And then the first item, what was the first item in Jerry's letter?
About the facade?
No. And anyway, there was a response provided by the applicant that was also sent out to the town council today.
Does the applicant want to clear up why the facade is not being preserved, just that way public knows?
Yeah. Yes, Glenn, I'll do that. We did consider trying to include the facade into the existing plan, and we met with town staff on that, and the obvious or apparent conclusion was that in order to create the parking behind the building and the off-site delivery, we needed to pull the entire structure forward closer to the street by 10 feet. Otherwise, we did not get the additional parking or off-site delivery. And because of that, that precluded us from being able to try to incorporate the facade.
Is it not possible to move the facade?
You know, Elise, I'm not sure I can answer that question. I can tell you I've been in the building and it's in pretty sad shape. I don't even hardly like walking in there. And I think if we did anything to try to move that building, it would just collapse. And the church structure itself has been there for 30-ish years. And the new addition is designed to flow visually and height-wise and everything with the existing structure. So we don't feel like we're impacting the neighborhood with that change.
I saw some drawings in the packet. Is that for the proposed architecture? And does anybody know offhand what page that was?
I'll bring it up on the screen here, the proposed architecture.
Please, if you got your computer, it's page 60 and 61.
Thanks,
James,
Glenn.
James, do you have the color renderings? Well, that shows it pretty well. The section to the left is the new addition. The roof style and color is the same as the existing church. The exterior construction is the same as the existing church, and probably the only departure from the way the existing church looks is if we do in fact add those solar panels.
So here's the existing church, here's the proposed addition, as seen from Midland Avenue, and here's the solar on the roof of the proposed addition. Just to finish the public correspondence that we received, Jerry Terwilliger's other topic in his most recent email relates to parking in the downtown area. You know, he had concerns that the middle school and elementary school parking wouldn't be accessible when school is in session. And so, Pat, would you like to talk about that at all?
100%, James. First of all, as I mentioned earlier, the primary purpose of the new space is for a better facility for our existing education programs and to provide room for fellowship after church services. We do not, we have our annual St. Patrick's Day dinner that would end up in there too, but that stuff's been going on for years, and we really don't expect any dramatic change in the usage of the facilities in terms of people and parking. The school district does have an existing facility use policy that addresses availability of parking. They've sent us a letter stating that, you know, they support what we're doing and using that as overflow parking. So if we did, for instance, pick up a wedding or something, then part of the approval for us to allow that event would most definitely include, you know, provisions that they have to be able to park overflow at the school, which would preclude scheduling an event like that during school hours. So we thought the school district policy looked really agreeable to how we operate, and it looked like a pretty successful plan. And it also, I think Gary mentioned he thought it was a temporary agreement, but that's the school's published policy, school district's published policy, and it certainly looked to us to be adequate for our needs.
Hey, James, can I mention something about that question? This is Father Rick.
Yes.
Just real quick, when he mentions about when school's in session during the day, the only activity that we've ever had at St. Vincent is an occasional funeral. And since I'm also in charge of the church in Carbondale, St. Mary the Crown, when I foresee a large funeral, I always have it in Carbondale because there's a lot more parking, and therefore we will not have the parking problem at all at St. Vincent's. The maximum people we've had at a funeral at St. Vincent's is maybe 30. And like I said, that's maybe once every 2 or 3 months. And besides that occasional funeral, there's nothing that goes on in the church during school hours. So that's my 2 cents.
I just had one more question on the parking. Like reading through the applicant, you know, it's dated February 13th, 2020 at 1:18 p.m. There will be 7 parking spaces behind the building. So reading through this applicant, it looks like it went from 7 to 5 to 4.
Some of that, Glenn, came about because of the neighbor to the west not allowing us to access their driveway to swing into the space behind the church. Okay. So we had to adjust our plan to where we have, I'm pretty sure it's either a 9 or 10 foot wide driveway, and there's a tree right in the fence line between the 2 driveways at the back that the neighbor is most interested in keeping, and is a requirement in the recommendation from P&Z that we do keep that tree. So not having the ability to swing around onto the neighbor's driveway to make access easier into our rear parking really forced us to adjust.
Perfect, makes sense.
Could you compare, I think the new addition's 2,400 square feet. How much are we removing in the old house? How big's that guy? Looks
Boy,
like,
I'm not sure, Bill. It is 2 stories. It has a tiny, I guess you could call it a root cellar. It's only like 5.5 feet tall and.
so it's probably on the order of
something like that, but.
Yeah.
I don't know, but that house doesn't feel like much over 2,000 or 2,400 square feet.
Okay.
There is the garage is coming down too, excuse me, it's a pretty sizable garage. And that is where the new parking is going to be located. And then the use of the garage right now is almost exclusively storage, and we will relocate that storage to the church basement, where we used to hold classes.
Okay. Yeah, it's not a huge dramatic change in terms of massing, building on the site.
One other public comment that we have not yet addressed, well, there's 2, they were exactly the same, from Polly Pollard, who's the neighbor immediately behind the existing church, and Ms. Cavallo, I think is the name, which is the neighbor behind the rectory. They both commented on parking right there, and they both requested a privacy fence. We think that's way more than reasonable, and we're happy to work with them on that. Don't know if the town has requirements on privacy fences we have to follow, or if we just work with them and see what they want and build it.
The town does have,
Definitely.
oh, sorry, go ahead, Pat, sorry.
Go ahead, James.
I was just gonna say, the town does have, maximum height limitations on privacy fences of 6 feet tall.
I would think that, especially Polly has expressed a lot of concern, I guess, that from her back porch, she has a nice cypress view, and she was worried that this could cause her to lose that. So I would think she would not want to see a tall fence either. And as relates to that question, with our new building being pushed forward 10 feet and the garage being removed, her view should improve, not do worse.
Any additional comments, questions from council to the applicant? Susan,
No.
we've gotten nothing back.
Yeah, let me just double check. We got no additional email, sorry, I interrupted. No additional emails and, no text, indicating that anybody wanted to speak.
Okay. Well, with that, then I will close the public hearing. Let it record show it's at 7:56 p.m.
Mr. Mayor, just one point of clarification for the record. Unless my clock is off, I think it was open, the public hearing was opened at 6:43 and closed at 6:50.
Yeah, excuse me, 6, yeah, what did I say, 7? Yeah.
No worries.
Ahead of myself here. Okay, thanks, Jeff. Appreciate that. I was just testing you. Any additional comment, question? Is there interest in the motion?
Mayor, I move the town council approve ordinance number 17, series of 2020 on first reading and continue and set the public hearing and second reading for September 8th, 2020.
Second.
So it's been moved and seconded by Councilor Drummond. Any discussion on the motion before we call the roll? Pam, please call the roll.
Thank you, Mayor. Okay, let's begin with David Knight. Oh, David's not here. Sorry, he recused himself. Bill Infante?
Here and yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Bill. Glenn Drummond?
Yes.
Gary Tenenbaum?
Yes.
Thank you, Gary. Elise Hoddle?
Yes.
Thank you. Bill Kane?
Yes.
And Brian Slack?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you so very much.
Very appreciative. So, councilors, we now move on to item 6B of our agenda. It's a public hearing and second reading of ordinance number 16, series of 2020. It's an ordinance of the Town Council of the Town of Basalt, amending the Basalt Municipal Code, Chapter 16, Chapter 17, Subdivisions, Chapter 18, Building Regulations, and Chapter 7, Health, Sanitation, and Animals, and Chapter 13, Municipal Utilities related to wildfire protection. So we've had John Melly and Jeff and Susan and Rick Fout on this item. We're seeing this now on second reading. So Susan or James?
No, I'm going to kick it off. This is the second reading, and it's a public hearing, and what we're looking for tonight is final action and approval on the amendments to the town code dealing with wildfire protection. And I think everybody knows that these amendments were brought to us by the Roaring Fork Fire Authority on John Melly, and who's on our Zoom call here. And Brooke Stott is also on our Zoom call. And, you know, obviously the amendments are in response to the Lake Christine fire and all the other fires that we've been seeing around Colorado and the West. Since we had a work session presentation, and then we had a presentation at the first reading and public hearing, and also we kind of had a PowerPoint presentation when we presented to the public that was also geared specifically to the building community. I thought maybe I would forego the PowerPoint presentation and briefly kind of summarize the amendments, and then if we had questions, maybe bring up particular slides. Again, these regulations that are in front of you are really patterned after Snowmass Village, but we took Snowmass regulations and we met as a group, which included the fire district, included our attorney and his a co-worker in his office, Richard Kramer Peterson, and then from the town staff, it obviously included Rick Fout, our building official, and James and me. And what we ended up doing was taking the regulations and putting them into 5 different chapters of the town code. The first 3 really deal with new development, and the last 2 pertain town-wide. And it's important to note that for the town of Basalt, all of the town was determined to be in a wildfire hazard. So the regulations apply equally whether you are on Ridge Road, or you're in Elk Run, or you're in Willits Town Center. So the first chapter that we were amending is chapter 16, zoning, and really those amendments just formalize the land use referral process to include comments with the fire department, and it indicated that they'll use guidelines issued by the Colorado State Forest Service. Exhibit B of your ordinance includes amendments to Chapter 17. These are very similar to the ones we did in 16. Chapter 17 deals with subdivisions. It formalizes the land use application referral process. And it emphasizes the importance of having adequate access. The most important regulations really are included in Chapter 18, building regulations. And the most important thing that these regulations do is they require the hardening of structures. And the regulations will prevail over HOA regulations. And they also address regulations that are more, the language in the code addresses things that aren't already covered by our adopted international codes and the fire code that we have adopted. So by way of example, the regulations deal with the height. Your existing code deals with the height of lettering and that you have to be able to see it from the street, but these regulations deal with the fact that your lettering for addressing has to be visible from the street. This is an area that we did make a slight tweak to between first and second reading. Rick Fout, we had our special meeting that was geared toward the building community, and then we also prepared a commentary that was more descriptive about how the regulations changed, and Rick put that up on his building permit page, and he did get a couple questions from some architects. So we particularly amended the language on walls and siding to make it clear that you didn't have to have a fire resistant rating material, that there were other solutions to preparing what the fire district was looking for. And then in chapter 17, that's our chapter dealing with health, sanitation, and animals. This pertains now town-wide, not just to new development, and we're speaking to the storage of materials on your lot and making sure that they don't create a fire hazard. And in chapter 13, that's our municipal utilities, and it's really addressing that all meters and valves, et cetera, need to be accessible by the fire district and your utilities so you can shut them off in case of a fire. I pointed out that we did make changes to chapter 7 to chapter 18, our building regulations, since first and second reading, and the last page of your packet shows a compare document of those. And really, they were very, very, very minor. They were mainly to provide for more internal consistency between the items, and also to just make it clear that you weren't locked into having a fire-rated material for your walls, that there were other options. So with that, I would ask for clarifications from the rest of my committee. Maybe John, if there was something that you wanted to add. You're on mute. Yep.
Yes. Yeah, thank you. Yes, good evening. First of all, I'd like to thank the council for your consideration of this, and that the staff has worked very hard to make this a educational type of a code, as well as a code that'll help prepare Basalt for any future wildfire that could come through the area. It's a first step as far as new developments. It's not a retroactive code. It's a very attainable code, and there are times when you just have to trust your code officials and staff that we're not a heavy-handed type of a group. We're going to continue to work with architects and builders, much like we already have in Snowmass Village. This has been in effect here for, it's going close to a year, maybe 8 months. And it's actually worked out well, and I think our architects and builders understand why we're going this route. It's comparable to other wildfire codes throughout Colorado and the nation. With that, I thank you for your consideration tonight.
Jeff, did you want to add anything?
No, just one comment that the changes to Chapter 18, as Susan said, were to ensure some internal consistency and address some of the proper standards for that wall installation that were recommended by the fire district. But that was all. And
the other thing is, maybe I didn't emphasize, we did provide in the ordinance that if there were, unique circumstances or something that we really needed to work through, that the TRC could, provide for interpretation and some minor amendments after input from the fire district and the building official. And the TRC is a technical review committee, and has 4 voting members, that's made up of the town manager, the planning director, the town attorney, and the public works director. So with that, Rick, is there anything that you would like to add?
No, I can't add much. You guys covered it well. We just had some builders and architects, kind of thank us for our work, and then just kind of hone in on the walls and siding. It seemed like everybody was okay and not harsh by the roofs, by the decks, by the soffits, gutters, the groundskeeping, etc. They just didn't want to be stifled on the walls. Their creativity and their, variety of ways that they can finish the walls. And so I kind of relooked at that, and we didn't change much. Very, very subtle, just to allow, yes, for more variety and more creativity, but also to get the Firewise, techniques implemented there, and to make our builders and architects comfortable that we'd be working with them and that we would achieve everything, both the architectural styles that they desired and the Firewise that the fire district desires. So that's about it.
So with that, we're available for questions, and then we can open up the public hearing.
And we lost
Uh-oh.
Bill. Can we
Wait,
stop him?
stop, yep, stop.
Mayor, you're muted.
Sorry, I was muted, but I was in the middle of the question. Could you refresh the council's memory about the timing on when the ordinance takes effect? And I guess the question would be, do we run any risk if this ordinance doesn't take effect for 30 days, which I think is pretty typical, of having applicants kind of speed up and try to get applications in to beat the adoption of the new code? Or is there a provision to require building permit applications going forward to be compliant with the new code? Or what's the sequence and timeline? Jeff, this is, or Susan.
Well, we established right in the body of, there's 2 places where the ordinance becomes effective, but we spelled it out in Chapter 16 zoning about applications after September 17th, 2020. And I believe that date came from when we ran out the publication notice, that the effective date was going to be September 17th. So, technically between now and September 17th, someone could submit an application and they would be considered under the prior regulations. But that's the effective date in the ordinance. And James confirmed that.
Yes, correct.
Do we think that's a risk, or are we okay? I mean, is Rick seeing a lot of increased traffic? And this all looks like it makes total sense. I mean, these are kind of virtuous things to do in the building construction trades. I don't know if it imposes significant added cost. I don't think it does. So I'm just kind of curious to see if there might be anything necessary in the way of trying to do an emergency ordinance or anything to make sure that we head off any kind of stampede to try to get applications in to beat the deadline.
It doesn't feel that way. We're steady. We're receiving apps just constantly. I got my thumb on the pulse pretty well, and I don't think anybody's racing and tracking, this process that closely. As you said, Bill, no one's too scared of it. it's virtuous to do, and they're doing it in the other areas all around us. So there's not a real spooky feeling out there with the applicants that aren't in yet but are kind of in line. And I don't feel like anyone's trying to race ahead of it, honestly. And that's my opinion.
That's, I think yours is probably the most valuable opinion we can get on this topic, so thank you.
Yeah, I would say that's my view, actually.
Anybody else, council? We want to open this up.
David Knight,
for public
Councilor Knight had a question.
Glenn, you go first. You raised your hand first.
Oh.
And I'll go.
I just wanted to make sure it's stated to the public, like, when we're enacting an ordinance like this, in my mind, it's no different than if you live on the coast, you have hurricanes, you gotta put your house on stilts. There's certain things we have to do to be responsible as far as homeowners, living in the environment you live in. That's the main thing that this whole code accomplishes, in my mind.
Well said. David?
Yeah, I think these are great code changes and they make a lot of sense. The only question I have, and it's a small thing, but just I'm curious about it, with the gutter and the leaf guard requirement, how does that work with, this would be a question for you, Rick, if you're listening. How does that work with the heat tape being in the gutter with a leaf guard on top of it? Is that how people typically are supposed to do it with this new code, or is there a different way? Because you see a lot of heat tape and gutters and downspouts around, and you can see how the potential for ice dams and things like that, which is a whole other problem that could arise. I'm just curious what your thoughts on that are.
I think that's one like a few others that are gonna rear their ugly head, you know, to choose bad words. And we've got to learn this thing up, and we've got to work with it, putty in our hands, as you know, Susan has pointed out, and wisely built into this. The technical review committee can be looking at, you know, one-of-a-kind extenuating circumstances where homes are below a bank on a north side and requiring heat tape, and we can make some adjustments when you know, the heat tape is the overriding priority, and that's what's nice about the TRC review. If something like that needs to be considered, addressed, tweaked, you know, John and Brooke and I will be getting together with James and Susan and everyone and looking at some of those case-by-case, you know, circumstances. But you bring up one that, you know, we're just going to experience, we're going to come across, we're going to live through. This is going to evolve. As John was saying, it's a first step. And, yeah, it's going to be a challenge, but it's a good thing to be doing. And we're just going to work with it and work with people and work with some of those issues that are going to come up. We don't have the crystal ball. We can't see it all. John's been doing it in Snowmass for 8 months, so we've got that look into the future. But that's a good question, David. And, you know, we'll take it seriously. We'll work with the one-of-a-kind circumstances like that that will no doubt crop up. We're flexible here.
Thanks, Rick.
Okay. Additional questions of staff or the team? I think at this point then we should open it up for public comment. Jeff, you might want to check my chronometer here, but I got 7:18 for the opening of the public hearing. So, Susan,
Sure.
maybe open.
Sure, remember to email planning@basalt.net or text 970-987-7010 with your name and phone number if you would like to speak. So far, we haven't received any public comments emailed to us.
another 30 seconds here.
Yeah,
If you
I
have
got
any interest.
another 19 seconds and we're good. Okay, we're ready.
Okay, thank you. With that, hearing no public comment, we'll close the public hearing, 7:19 p.m. And I would entertain a motion or further questions, but perhaps a motion would be appropriate.
Mayor, I move that the town council adopt ordinance number 16, series of 2020 on second reading.
Is there a second?
And, Elise, just for clarity, is that with those amendments presented at second reading?
Yes, with the amendment.
Thank you.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Any question or discussion on the motion? Hearing none, Pam, I would ask that you call the roll.
Absolutely. Bill Infante.
Yes.
Thank you, Bill. Gary Tenenbaum.
Yes.
Thank you, Gary. Elise Hoddle.
Yes.
Thank you, Elise. Bill Kane.
Yes.
Thank you, Bill. Ryan Slack.
Yes.
Thank you, Ryan. Glenn Drummond.
Yeah.
Thank you. And David Knight.
Yes.
Motion unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thanks, John and Rick, and for the hard work on this, and hopefully we can get some rain in here and keep these fires away. So with that, we turn to item number 6C, resolution number 32, series of 2020, resolution of the Town Council of the Town of Basalt, Colorado, adopting a fund balance / reserve policy. Christy Coyne is up.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate that. We also have with us tonight, as you may notice, Cheryl Ruppel from our Finance Advisory Board. So thank you very much for being here today, Cheryl, and helping with the presentation. I can tell you, first of all, the Finance Advisory Board spent hours on this review, and they really did a great job of asking a lot of great questions, probably about 3 hours or so in meetings, something like that. Thanks for being here. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so everybody can see that and start to talk about the presentation itself. Oops. Turn off my phone. Okay. I can get it. There we go. Okay. So first thing I wanted to note, besides just the Finance Advisory Board's involvement in this, in the creation of this policy, is that Council was looking at this as part of the strategic plan, work plan for 2020. They wanted us and the Finance Advisory Board to look at this policy and to look at our current policy and look to see what we needed to revamp and revisit and just bring this back to per council's thinking. So this is what the culmination of that work is. The policy also had been reviewed by a lot of our experts in the area, including Jeff, our attorney, Bruce Kimmel, and the town's auditors, and all of those recommendations had been included in this document as well. So just a little bit about the process to start with is I looked at a lot of different municipal examples of different fund balance policies to see what was normally included in a fund balance policy and what was not. I probably looked through 5 or 10 different examples and then gave the top 3 examples to the Finance Advisory Board for their thinking in creating the policy. Then we also looked at their recommendation, a lot of different data, financial data, historical data from the town to see what might be applicable for the town as far as a good fund balance policy to have and what the minimum fund balance should be, and those kind of things. And so we use that data to drive this policy as well. And then obviously the thing that the Finance Advisory Board wrestled with pretty significantly was what percentage the minimum fund balance for the general fund should be. That's obviously the meat and potatoes of the policy. And we landed on a recommendation of 40% minimum fund balance, which is at roughly about 4.8 months of operations. We believe that'll give us enough latitude in the case of fiscal downturns and those kind of things to make adjustments as need be, and give us enough operating cash to make sure that we're maintaining our essential services during those times. Okay. So, I'm going to go through the policy itself. So we did put, just as you could note, is that we just did the investment policy a little while ago. And as we're creating new recommended policies for finance, is we're trying to keep all of those in a similar format, so everybody's used to seeing the same format. And what Finance Advisory Board and myself would like to do eventually is just create a finance packet of policies that really is seamless together, and you can see how they all work with the same kind of general areas like governing authority and purpose, for example, scope, governing authority, all those kind of things are included in all those policies, so for ease of use. Second thing I'll note is that it's really important to understand the purpose of what your fund balance or reserve policy is. And so obviously the first and foremost is maintaining adequate levels of fund balance to mitigate risk. But there's a lot of other things that people don't realize with fund balance. And when I talk about fund balance, I should say that that also equates to reserves, because a lot of people think of it as a reserve, but I guess you could consider it like your beginning checkbook balance. It's how much of that should you have in your beginning checkbook at the beginning of the year, just so that I'm trying to relate it to as many people as possible, and how they may relate to a reserve amount. One thing that a lot of people don't, look at a lot is maintaining a sound bond rating, because if we do need to incur debt or have a large project where we have to take out debt, we want a low interest rate to save the taxpayers as much money as possible. And having sound fund balance levels and fund balance policies are very well received by those rating agencies. That just makes this a very good fiscally solvent policy and a good financial base for us to work off of. Let's see here. Maintaining the infrastructure, town's capital infrastructure, one-time funding needs, cash flow, generating interest income, all of those things. The next thing I want to note is, as far as the governing authority, that we're going to comply obviously with the Government Accounting Standards Board requirements around fund balance, in addition to this policy, and obviously that the council can make amendments to this policy as needed, because the scope or the economic conditions change quite a bit, as we've seen currently, and sometimes we have to re-review these policies every few years, so we wrote that in the policy. Just a note on our scope of our policy, this includes the general fund and the water fund. Our other funds are really not applicable for minimum fund balance policies, because they're related to specific dollars that are supposed to be spent for a specific purpose, money in, money out. So just a note there. We tried to make this as easy to read as possible, because a lot of this is auditor speak, and we realize that. So we want to make sure when we're using the auditor speak that everybody could read the definitions and we were being abundantly clear about what the policy was trying to say. So that's the next part of the policy. And then the meat and potatoes, as I said earlier, on the fund balance requirements is looking at minimum fund balances, and that we would recommend a 40% minimum fund balance, and that 40% is of the 3-year average of the most current approved budgeted expenses. So what we're trying to do there, and this was also discussed at length with Finance Advisory Board, is to make sure that we don't have those things included in there and kind of weighted down if there was a large capital project. And so we're looking at averages of the last 3 years so that one project doesn't skew our use for or need for additional fund balance. And then also we're excluding some large financing projects and non-operating transfers to other funds to make sure that there aren't any expenditures that could skew that once again. So trying to keep that on an even keel looking at our cash flow. And the water fund is a little bit different. So if you might recall is that we actually send out our water bills quarterly. And so that's why we were recommending a 33% minimum fund balance for 3-year average of the most current approved budget expenses. So we could meet that cash flow need based upon quarterly utility billing. So that's why we did that. And then there's an important part of this policy that we had a lot of conversation as well about. So if the fund balance was to fall below the minimum fund balance for various reasons, that we would have a need to present that information to town council and let them know if it was because of an economic situation. And then if it was a planned or approved one-time expense, then it would need to include some conversation with council that would include a payback plan to get to our minimum fund balance so that we could look ahead and see how we're looking at repaying that so we could get back on track with that. Okay. And then reporting, the other thing, we're going to include this minimum fund balance requirements in our budget and also in our audit as well, so that it's very clear to council how much, and the community, how much money is available after meeting our minimum fund balance requirements and how much is needed to meet that minimum fund balance. Okay. And then looking at some historical information for the town's finances. One thing we heard from all of our experts is somewhere between a 33% minimum and a 50% minimum is reasonable. And so 33% would equate to about 2.3, 2.4 million in fund balance. And what we're recommending is about 2.87 million in fund balance based upon our current numbers. And 50% is about 3.5, 3.6 million. And historically, we've really kept
She's up?
Yeah.
Yeah, she's off the Zoom call drop. Can you test it, see?
Hey, Christie's off. Is anybody else hearing?
Yeah. Did she stop?
Welcome to Zoom. Enter your meeting ID followed by pound. Enter your participant ID followed by pound. Otherwise, please enter the meeting password followed by pound. You are in the meeting now. There are 14 participants in the meeting. This meeting is being recorded.
We're waiting on that to come back.
So
Yeah,
you're back up.
reconnecting the sound bill.
Okay.
There we are.
Okay, we're back on? Yep. Okay, awesome, thank you. So Cheryl, did you have any other thoughts or comments you'd like to add?
You know, I think this is a pretty cool project. Christy certainly did a great job of incorporating the comments and feedback she had gotten from the prior council, comments she's gotten from the current council, as well as some of the thoughts that we had in all of our discussions. And I think that it just is a policy that provides a good amount of flexibility, but is still a lot more conservative than it had been. And it's extremely feasible. And I think one of the great things was Doug was the one who had suggested putting in a repayment plan, but it needed to be worded in a way that wasn't so restrictive that it would make it just difficult to pull funds out of the reserve to be able to be used. So I think overall it covers a lot, but it's still very flexible. And 40% seems like a happy medium between being conservative and allowing both the town council and town management to be able to utilize the funds.
Okay. And that's the presentation. Is that, unless there's any questions or comments or thoughts from council?
Christy, one thought would be that, and I think we've already got this built into our quarterly reports, but it would be great to have sort of as a kind of a dashboard number, just kind of how an ongoing item as part of the quarterly report, just kind of where we stand with the fund balance, and kind of give the council some early warning if it looks like we're starting to approach it. You know, it'd be good to know. I mean, the real value in this is obviously planning in advance if it looks like we're starting to get close to our limit. So I would just add that as a recommendation that we highlight with our financial reporting where we stand and what the trend line looks like relative to maintaining this balance.
Thanks, Bill. I can go ahead and add that on our quarterly report, right, with our all of our cash balances.
Yeah, that'd be great. Questions, comments from council? I can't see everybody, so I can't tell if anybody's got their hand up.
We increased that by 5%.
Oh, Christy, can you quit sharing your screen?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I want to make sure that if there are any questions that I can always reshare it.
We were at 35%. You guys increased to 40%.
We were at 33% of revenues, and that was just for the current year's revenues. And so now we're going to 33% of the last 3 years of expenses. So it's quite a 7% increase because you're looking backwards, but that's what it looks like.
Okay. Additional questions, comments? Anybody in the mood for a motion on resolution number 32, establishing a 40% of annual budget for a reserve balance?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Was that a second, or was that somebody?
That was a second. Ben Drummond. Oh.
Okay, great. So it's
Okay,
moved and seconded. Any further discussion on the motion? Pam, please call the roll.
Certainly. Can I just clarify who made the second? Was that Elise or Glenn?
Glenn. Or Elise.
Okay.
Elise, you get it,
It was
Elise.
a tie. Okay.
Elise gets it.
Thank you. Okay. Let's begin with David Knight.
Yes.
Thank you. Ryan Slack.
Yes.
Thank you. Bill Infante.
Yes.
Thank you. Bill Kane.
Yes.
Thank you. Glenn Drummond.
Yes.
Gary Tenenbaum.
Yes.
And Elise Huddle.
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously.
Great. Well, thank you, guys. This is a record time tonight, so we will exercise what I understand to be the divine right of kings here, call for adjournment of the meeting. So if anybody anybody has any objections, let me know. Otherwise, we are adjourned for the night. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Bill.
We'll do this really, and we'll follow up with this, with the coffees. Just after hearing it, I have talked about how we could go to different places and have different counselors meet together and have a interesting rotating kind of plan here. It might be kind of fun. So let's think about that.
Okay.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks.
Thanks, all.
Good night, everyone.